Let's talk about this a little bit. When we're talking about pronouns, in case somebody has been off the planet for the last couple of years and doesn't know what we're talking about, we're talking about how people are referred to. And this isn't something that was talked about in the 50s or 60s, right?
Right.
70s, 80s. This is something that's fairly contemporary, true?
It's contemporary to some. Yes, yes, it is. It's a cultural shift that we're experiencing.
Why is this coming up now instead of 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago?
It's just because that's how cultures change, and they just evolve, and it happens over time. And when people get real upset about this particular iteration of a change, sometimes they don't understand how culture change works. So you can say, think about the clothes people wore in the 50s and then in the 60s and in the 70s. And those changes just happen gradually. And this one is just another part of those changes. I think that people would think the implications are more so than just changes in clothing, but they happen gradually to all of a sudden it is really prominent to a lot of people.
One of the things that I wanted to explore with you is why you think this has become such a hot topic. And frankly, I don't want to spend our entire time talking about this because I think you have an awful lot to offer to a divided nation beyond pronouns with regard to communication and all. But I wanted to start on this because it was the last thing that you and I
Yeah.
talked about. So I wanted to start on this, but then I want to talk about some other things too. Why is this such a divisive issue? Because I think it is a divisive issue.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And it's good to talk about this example in addition to what you said, because it's an example of how I approach communication and conflict in general. Um, well, there's at least two reasons it's divisive. First, you have people like Matt Walsh and his team capitalizing and exploiting the very real uncertainty that people can feel and face when there is a culture change like this. For me, I think it makes total sense to have people be fearful around something like gender pronouns or personal pronouns, and to feel anxiety when they learn about that, because it can question their fundamental core beliefs that they've grown up with, that might be a part of their community, their religious faith. That's what they've learned from their parents. And it's not, in some ways, it can be a luxury to have the time to explore all these differences and really to do that kind of educating. And if it doesn't happen in your community, then you're just not exposed to it. So when I say that, I feel like it makes sense that people would have uncertainty around it. So where I teach at Kent State, we're part of one of the most rural counties in Ohio, actually, but it bumps up against, more populated cities. And so there's a lot of different kinds of students, and I'm saying that for a reason. The students that are from the more rural areas, nobody's ever asked them what they think about personal pronouns. They literally never heard of it. And they don't talk about it. And so when you're being exposed to these ideas for the first time, it can, if you've grown up maybe as part of a community where there's only men and women, and it's all this sort of traditional narrative of how the world works, when all of a sudden there's this cultural shift happening, that can threaten the way that you have grown up, and it can create anxiety. And so my approach is to help people to understand that and work through that. And it's totally fair to have that anxiety. In my view, people exploit it by rather than trying to educate or try to help that individual understand where their anxiety is coming from and how they can work through it. And it's totally fair to have it. They are like, yeah, we're going to amplify those fears and just really exacerbate this divide and exploit it for our own gain.